Welcome back. Listen Up is exploring where people turn in the face of great suffering. Willard Metzger was working with World Vision when Haiti's 2010 earthquake left over 300,000 people dead. And Willard, you were amongst the wailing. Tell us about those early days.
Yeah, it's certainly an experience that I will never ever forget. As you mentioned, the wailing, the first thing I remember after the earthquake and all the dust and the settling and everything is just the millions of voices that were crying, praying, screaming. It was just it was a horrendous sound, something I will never forget.
And what do you do when you are able-bodied in that kind of chaos?
I was there with a group of from a church in New Brunswick, and so my first reaction, obviously, as leader of the group, is to try and make sure that your team is fine. And so we're all spilled out of the hotel we were staying in. Part of it had collapsed, and we gathered ourselves together and found that, remarkably, none of us had been hurt or injured. And then it was the millions of voices of wailing that starts to put it into perspective for you, that this is something much more bigger than just something in our immediate neighborhood that happened.
Well, we're going to go now to one of those voices. Here's what one Haitian pastor described for us in coping with trauma.
God has always been and will always be on his throne. He has created everything, and he's controlling everything, no matter what situations we are living today. Haitians are very spiritual, or let's say religious. We believe a lot in God. And it's nice to see that in this experience, I haven't heard anybody blaming God for what had happened.
Willard, you've had more than a year now to reflect on voices like that from Haiti. What do you think makes some people able to survive that kind of trauma?
I think resilience comes from knowing that you're not alone. You know, that you have a place to go right away. You have a resource, and so I think people of faith immediately will look to God, will look to a creator force to gain some strength and hope. And I think that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, we all remember the 2004 earthquake and the tsunami that rocked South Asia. Sri Lanka was the second hardest hit and is a nation still in recovery. We go now to a clip from a survivor from Sri Lanka who lost everything but her faith.
My mom said that generally in a situation like that, I would go berserk. I would probably go hysterical and scream and, you know, probably go into pieces. But my mom said, the most amazing thing that I saw in you was that you were so calm. You didn't cry, you didn't, you know, go or, you know, come and say, no, what are we going to do for food, or what are we going to do for this or that. You just said, just cook whatever there is and just feed them.
Why do you think that is?
I believe it was the presence of God within me at that time. Because at that time I knew that for a moment, actually, I told you that I was hoping that God would do this amazing miracle and our business would be safe, but it wasn't. But God promises in his word, he says that he will never leave you nor forsake you, and he showed that to me at that time.
Willard, what hope does the Christian theology give people in the face of that kind of loss?
Well, I think, as has been stated already, that sense of knowing that God is always with you, no matter what happens. And oftentimes, people have asked me in the Haiti situation, where was God in all that? And there's one scene that I remember will always stay with me. We were responding to injured people that were coming all through the night and had very little to be able to work with. We were just ripping bed sheets into bandages and stuff like that. And there was maybe about a 10-year-old boy that had a broken leg. We just had to set it with whatever you had and just baseboards, splints. And he was just laid out on the pavement in a lot of pain, just rolling around, a lot of pain. And whenever I'd look over at him, there was a sister that was maybe about 13 years old that just stayed with him all night, never left his side. All night, she just sat on the pavement by his head and just gently stroked his cheek all night. And to me, that was an image of the presence of God. You know, when you ask, in the midst of all this trauma and horrid situation, where was God? That was a picture of God's presence.
I saw that in Haiti as well. Helping hands, kind hands. It's God in action. And if you feel the impulse to be helping, we should be helping. Willard, we've heard now from 3 continents where disaster was so huge. What convinces you that the hope of Jesus is real in types of things like that?
I think I've seen it in 2 different ways. The one is by those in the midst of the trauma, experiencing trauma, just that level of peace, even in the midst of horrendous things happening. I think that has convinced me of the message of hope. And the other, I think, is in the response, and we've been seeing that a lot in these different disasters, that as God's people respond, that is such a clear indicator of the Spirit of God at work through the people of God.
All right. Willard Metzger, General Secretary of the Mennonite Church of Canada, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Stay with us. When we return, a must-have tool for trauma preparedness. That's coming up in The Wrap.